You think medieval peasants just ate rotten food and died young. But here's the shocking truth. Medieval people created preservation methods so brilliant that 95% lasted decades without spoiling. I'm about to reveal 10 genius survival foods that will blow your modern mind. Hardtack Roman soldiers carried buccellatum, and medieval knights traveled with biscuit of muslin, simple flour-water crackers that could survive 50 years. By 1731, every sailor got 1 pound daily, baked 4 times, and prepared 6 months before voyages. Civil War hardtack found in museums is nearly 200 years old and still edible. No refrigeration needed, survives extreme weather, and provides essential calories. But hardtack was just the beginning of medieval food genius. Stockfish. While hardtack fed armies, coastal people mastered fish preservation. Vikings invented stockfish by hanging gutted cod on wooden racks, removing 80% of water content. The process created fish hard as wood that could feed crews during months-long voyages across unknown seas. Still produced today in Norway, exported worldwide worth $244 million to Portugal alone. This single product accounted for most of Norway's trade income from the Viking Age through the medieval period. Yet another medieval food made stockfish look like child's play. Pemmican. Medieval Europeans discovered Native American manufactured grease, made from 5 pounds of meat reduced to 1 pound powder, mixed with rendered fat and berries. Lewis and Clark expeditions relied on it. Fur traders preferred it over fresh food. Single bison produced 50 pounds dried meat plus 50 pounds tallow equals 100 pounds pemmican, lasting 10, 20, even 30 years. At 3,000 calories per pound, this food could sustain people for months during harsh winters. Makes today's energy bars look like amateur hour. But the most ingenious preservation method combined salt with ancient knowledge. Salt-cured meats. Medieval cooks discovered that salt draws water out of microbial cells through osmosis, killing bacteria without understanding the science. Salt was so valuable that wealthy guests sat above the salt while commoners sat below the salt. Animals were slaughtered before Christmas. Salted butter contained 5 to 10% salt to prevent spoilage through winter. Sailors wrote that using bad salt was great hazard of men's lives. Wrong salt caused scurvies, consumptions, and other acrimonious diseases. Required exactly 20% salt concentration to kill most bacteria species. Peasants packed vegetables, eggs, and fish in salt-lined jars. Today's cured meats use identical principles developed 1,000 plus years ago. Medieval monasteries perfected an even more sophisticated preservation art. Fermented foods. Medieval people discovered fermentation produces vitamins as they ferment, creating more nutritious food from basic ingredients. Monasteries produced sauerkraut, kimchi-style vegetables, fermented fish sauces. 12th century German monasteries documented wine-to-vinegar processes for vegetable pickling. Fermentation not only preserved foods, but created more nutritious foods and made palatable foods from less than desirable ingredients. Fermented cabbage prevented scurvy on long voyages, saving thousands of sailors' lives. Medieval brewers understood pH levels without modern instruments. Fermented foods became medieval Europe's first processed food industry. Today's probiotics industry, worth billions, started with medieval fermentation knowledge. Spoiled fermentation could kill entire families. Success required precise timing. Monasteries gained political influence by controlling fermentation secrets. Yet monks discovered an even more remarkable preservation breakthrough. Honey preserved fruits, while salt killed bacteria. Medieval people learned honey prevents bacteria from forming. Ancient Greeks and Romans mastered the technique of using heated sugar and fruit pectin, creating first jams and preserves. Sugar draws out water from harmful pathogens, which dehydrates and destroys them. Medieval people discovered osmotic pressure. 14th century English manuscripts describe apples lasting 5 years. Medieval monasteries produced honey-preserved foods worth the modern equivalent of $50,000 plus annually. Honey preservation enabled year-round vitamin C access, preventing diseases that killed thousands. Medieval beekeepers understood seasonal honey composition, variations affecting preservation quality. Honey preservation secrets were guarded like military intelligence between kingdoms. Today's commercial preserves use identical, honey-based principles. Honey-preserved foods could mean survival or starvation during harsh winters. Honey preservation rituals became religious ceremonies in many medieval communities. Failed honey preservation attempts created toxic botulism, killing entire households. Medieval people discovered preservation methods that made honey look simple. Smoking techniques. Medieval smokehouses represented sophisticated understanding of chemical processes. Smoking adds chemicals to the surface of meat that reduce concentration of salt, required combining preservation methods. 11th century German texts describe exact wood types, temperature control, timing for different meats, cold smoking preserves, hot smoking cooks, plus preserves smoke drying combinations. Properly smoked meats last 2 to 3 years without any refrigeration. Smoking enabled medieval meat trade across vast distances, creating first international food networks. Medieval smokemasters understood wood chemistry: oak for beef, apple for pork, cherry for fish. Smoking killed parasites that made fresh meat, deadly, preventing trichinosis epidemics. Smokehouse ownership determined village status. Smokemaster was an honored profession. Today's $50 billion processed meat industry uses methods perfected by medieval craftsmen. Wrong smoking techniques created carcinogenic compounds. Medieval people learned through deadly trial error. Kingdoms taxed smoking materials, controlling food preservation, access. Smoking transformed seasonal hunting into year-round protein availability. Armies with superior smoking knowledge conquered those without preserved food supplies. Guild smokemasters passed techniques through oral tradition, many methods lost forever. The most sophisticated medieval preservation required no heat, salt, or smoke. Root cellars. Medieval builders understood that underground rooms kept foods cool using natural temperature regulation. P-century castle plans show elaborate cellaring systems maintaining -55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Stone-lined cellars with precise ventilation prevented moisture while maintaining optimal humidity. Properly stored root vegetables lasted 8 to 12 months without spoiling. Cellars preserved apples, potatoes, carrots, turnips, cheese wheels, wine barrels. Medieval builders created consistent 85% humidity without modern instruments. Cellaring enabled medieval cities to survive winter food shortages that killed thousands. Optimal cellar depth varied by regional soil composition. Knowledge passed through generations. Cellar ownership separated surviving families from those facing winter starvation. Castle cellars could sustain sieges lasting years, determining battle outcomes. Medieval cellars used passive air circulation systems more efficient than modern. Refrigeration. Cellar failures during harsh winters meant entire communities faced famine. Improper cellaring created toxic gas accumulation, killing families entering sealed spaces. Cellar blessing ceremonies marked autumn preparation rituals across medieval Europe. Today's root cellar revival movement copies medieval engineering principles. Lords controlled cellar access, determining which peasants survived harsh seasons. Medieval cellars incorporated primitive refrigeration using winter ice storage. Wealthy families hoarded cellar space while poor families' food rotted above ground. Medieval people perfected preservation methods requiring no construction whatsoever. Fat confit preservation. Medieval cooks discovered animal fat creates living seal around food. Rendered fat eliminates oxygen contact while maintaining food moisture, perfect preservation balance. 13th century French manuscripts describe duck confit lasting entire winters without spoilage. Medieval cooks understood fat rendering temperatures, optimal ratios, storage vessel requirements. Fat-preserved meats retained original flavor and texture after 6-month storage. Confit worked for duck, goose, pork, even vegetables like garlic and mushrooms. Fat preservation enabled luxury food trade across medieval Europe's emerging merchant networks. Confit turned seasonal abundance into year-round availability, changing dietary patterns forever. Fat preservation provided emergency protein during agricultural failures and sieges. Medieval storage vessels designed specifically for confit. Ceramic crocks with precise seal mechanisms. Fat preservation knowledge separated wealthy households from peasant families eating spoiled food. Armies carrying confit could campaign through winters, gaining strategic advantage. Improperly rendered fat caused botulism, poisoning, killing entire noble households. Medieval cooks understood fat oxidation, rancidity prevention without modern chemistry knowledge. Today's sous vide and vacuum sealing use principles perfected by medieval fat confit masters. Fat preservation secrets were closely guarded trade advantages between competing regions. Master confit preparations were considered high culinary art. Chefs gained legendary status. Fat rendering marked seasonal transitions, community events. Preserving traditional knowledge, control over fat supplies meant power over food preservation, determining regional survival rates. Poor families couldn't afford fat for preservation, watching food rot while wealthy neighbors had abundant stores. The most ingenious medieval preservation method combined. ALL. These techniques, combination preservation medieval masters combined multiple preservation methods, creating superfoods lasting decades. 14th century monastery records describe foods combining salt curing, smoking, fat sealing, and controlled drying. Layered preservation created redundant bacterial protection. If one method failed, others maintained safety. Salt-smoked fat-sealed hams discovered in abandoned medieval cellars remained edible after 40 years. Medieval food alchemists understood chemical interactions between salt, smoke, fat, and natural enzymes. English salt beef combining brining, smoking, fat, coating, German sausages, using salt-smoking natural casings controlled fermentation. Combination preservation enabled international medieval food trade worth millions in today's currency. Multi-method foods provided fail-safe nutrition during extended sieges, famines, harsh winters. Combination preservation knowledge separated surviving communities from those facing starvation. Food preservation guilds developed secret techniques, passed through master-apprentice relationships. Armies with superior combination preservation conquered territories lacking advanced food storage. Medieval masters understood bacterial competition, pH balance, moisture control without modern microbiology. Complex preservation required precise timing. Mistakes created deadly toxins, killing entire households. Combination preservation needed specialized facilities, combining smokehouses, salt storage, cellaring, fat rendering. Today's industrial food processing uses identical multi-method approaches, perfected by medieval craftsmen. Preservation technique theft was considered economic. Espionage punishable by death in some regions. Master preservers were considered equal to goldsmiths, weaponsmiths, highly honored professions. Rulers monopolized preservation materials and knowledge, controlling population survival rates. Combination preservation marked major seasonal celebrations, communities cooperating for survival. Wealthy monasteries hoarded preservation knowledge while surrounding populations faced food insecurity. Medieval combination preservation techniques form foundation of modern food industry, worth trillions globally. These preservation masters achieved food security that modern society is still trying to replicate. Cheese cave aging medieval monks discovered that limestone caves created perfect environments for preserving dairy products that could last years without spoiling. These natural refrigerators maintained constant -55 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures with humidity conditions impossible to replicate artificially until modern times. French monasteries built entire cheese aging operations inside mountain caves, creating wheels of cheese that improved with age rather than rotting. The limestone walls naturally filtered air while providing beneficial mold cultures that protected cheese from harmful bacteria. Some medieval cheeses aged in caves for 5 to 10 years, developing flavors and textures that made them worth more than gold. Swiss alpine communities carved artificial caves into mountainsides specifically for cheese storage, creating underground chambers that could preserve hundreds of wheels simultaneously. The process was so sophisticated that medieval cheesemakers understood bacterial cultures, aging temperatures, and humidity control without any scientific instruments. Cove-aged cheeses became medieval Europe's most valuable trade commodities, with single wheels selling for equivalent of modern luxury cars. Monastery cheese caves were considered sacred spaces where monks performed blessing rituals over aging wheels. The knowledge was so secret that cave locations were passed down only to trusted successors, with some caves remaining hidden for centuries. Modern artisanal cheesemakers spend millions trying to recreate medieval cave conditions using artificial climate control, yet still can't match the natural perfection of limestone cave environments that medieval monks mastered through pure Observation and trial. Cave preservation required no energy, no maintenance, and produced foods that literally got better with time. Something modern preservation can never achieve. Icehouse storage. Medieval nobles built elaborate icehouses that provided refrigeration capabilities lasting 18 months using only winter ice and ingenious engineering. These underground structures were lined with straw, sawdust, and sometimes sheep's wool to create insulation systems more effective than modern foam. During winter, teams of workers cut massive blocks of ice from frozen ponds and rivers, storing them in pyramid-shaped chambers designed to minimize melting. The largest medieval icehouses could store 1,000+ tons of ice, providing refrigeration for entire castle communities through summer and autumn. Norwegian and English icehouses from the 1300s used double-wall construction with air gaps that prevented heat transfer better than modern insulation techniques. Icehouse construction required understanding of thermodynamics, drainage systems, and architectural engineering that wouldn't be matched until the Industrial Revolution. Wealthy families employed full-time icekeepers whose job was managing the complex systems of vents, drains, and access tunnels. Some icehouses were built into hillsides with elaborate entrance chambers that prevented warm air from entering storage areas. The ice provided refrigeration for preserving fresh meats, dairy products, and even exotic imported foods that wealthy nobles demanded year-round. Medieval icehouses enabled preservation of fresh fish transported hundreds of miles inland, creating the first long-distance fresh food distribution networks. Construction costs were enormous, equivalent to building modern luxury homes, but provided refrigeration independence that even today's technology can't match during power outages. These systems worked purely through physics and engineering genius, requiring no external energy sources while providing consistent refrigeration that lasted over a year from single winter harvesting. These medieval survival foods reveal food preservation mastery that makes modern refrigeration seem primitive by comparison. While we complain about food expiring in days, medieval people created foods lasting decades, using only natural ingredients and scientific understanding passed through generations. The most shocking part, these techniques required zero electricity, no chemical additives, and no industrial equipment, just knowledge that today's food scientists are frantically trying to rediscover. You could start implementing these time-tested methods by learning basic salt curing immediately in your own kitchen. Modern preppers studying these medieval preservation patterns report dramatic improvement in food security and substantial cost savings. Want to master these medieval survival secrets that fed civilizations for centuries? Subscribe for our complete guide to historical preservation strategies that actually work in today's uncertain world. Don't let modern food dependence control your family's future when centuries of proven preservation wisdom is waiting to transform your food security forever.